MTN Sports, this is Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
Coach, welcome back. How we doing? How we feeling?
Doing well. Really excited about the opportunity in front of us. Anytime you get to be one of 16 that's still playing in December, that's what your aim is. And now it's just about putting our best football together to conclude this season.
Yeah, an exciting time, a 6th seed, so an opportunity for a home game here, some blue bloods coming through. It's going to be a lot of fun, but had the bye week. How'd you guys use that Thanksgiving week, and how'd you utilize the time off?
Yeah, going back to the week, there was no classes, so we reviewed that last regular season game, went through that thoroughly, and then had a chance to practice Tuesday and Wednesday, and hedged our bets that NDSU would win the first round matchup. So started preparing for them, allowed the guys to get away for about 48 hours, which included Thanksgiving Day, brought them back on Friday afternoon, just to get them back and lifted them, and then we practiced a little bit on Saturday, and really as we move through this week, I've had a very normal week, but really well ahead of the game as far as our preparation.
After a loss like you had in Missoula, you could either fold up or let it energize you. How have the guys responded this week?
Well, I think certainly the energized piece. You get in that room on Sunday morning and see the selection show, and I think the guys were really fired up that we got the 6th seed. Would have the bye. Still, they looked at our body of work and allowed us to reset in that bye week. I think it was really important. The previous 2 years, as we lost it in 21, we won it in 22 to reset in any regard. So you have a playoff season that's ahead of you. Everybody is back to 0-0, and we just got to find a way, against a really good opponent to get to 1-0 this week and survive in advance.
Yeah, I mean the 2021 run was different. You make the move with Tommy Malott getting in at quarterback and that sort of thing. So a different situation right now. But is that something you guys have been talking about? Well,
I think we have a lot of guys that are on that team. So a lot of guys that understand that the season it does not end with that regular season game if you're afforded the opportunity to play in the playoffs, and you can reset your mind, especially when you get a bye week, especially when you get a chance to, to decompress, to get away from it just a little bit and get back with family, while at the same time having that next opponent clearly on your mind. So, different situations with maybe the makeup of our team just a little bit, but certainly a situation where we got a lot of guys that were a part of that, and we're a part of last year's run, and to do well in December, you got to be willing to go after it. You got to be able to play your best football, and that's our mindset right now.
Well, and before we get into what this great opportunity in the playoffs, as we tie a bow on this last game at the end of the regular season, the loss against Montana, what are some of the things when you look back at that tape that really kind of stick with you, that frustrate you, and that kind of have kept you up at night the last week here?
Well, we got beat in all 3 phases, and all 3 phases wasn't, maybe a ton of plays. I mean, in special teams, it was probably a couple plays. Offense, defense, really that scenario of being able to create momentum and/or stop momentum. We didn't quite do that at any point in time. We did move the ball offensively in that first half, but came up short. And in a game like that, one thing we talked about, all those inches matter, and being close, on a block, on a throw, on a tackle, or whatever. I mean, that doesn't matter. You got to be able to make those plays, and what do we need to do to make some of those plays that we didn't make on that particular Saturday? Why didn't we make some of those plays? I think that's what you analyze, and that's what you gnash your teeth about until you get that next opportunity to go out and play, and that's. Hard to look in the mirror sometimes, but that's what we did. Watch that film. Like I said, went through it thoroughly, and I think as coaches and players, you look at it and say, okay, here's the things that we need to do moving forward. You learn from the good, you learn from the bad when you look back, and we got to be able to learn, but we got to be able to move forward, and that's I think we've gotten to that place, and we're excited about this next opportunity.
So when it comes to the offense, when you do look back, what are some of the things you did learn? Why were you guys not making some of the plays you wanted to make?
Well, I to say there's just one thing, it becomes a collection of things. I think while we moved it from time to time, and we certainly got down in the red zone, and I think you could analyze, okay, what we did there, how we executed. I think you're chasing points, so we go for it a little bit more on 4th down than we maybe typically would, and we didn't execute in those situations. Should that have looked a little bit different? Yes, it's easy to say that in hindsight. So, I think it's it's realizing, for our guys that, okay, in big games against good opponents, you have to be at your very best, and you got to be able to go play to play. And I don't think we did that Saturday in particular, and we have to do that moving forward. We have another really good opponent coming to us with an opportunity to continue to write our story.
All right, we're going to take a break, but as we get forward, we'll get ready for NDSU, and later Grace Lawrence sits down with Brody Grebe. More on the Bobcat Insider after this.
Welcome back to Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
Back again on the Bobcat Insider, Keaton Glogly with head coach Brent Vigen. Coach, I do want to ask you a little bit about the pass game, particularly from that game in Missoula. We've seen Tommy Millant have some really good passing games and do a lot of good things there, but that first half, 3 passes, and none of them were really kind of close to being caught. When you do look at the pass game, that you get that into a rhythm, and what do you learn from this game and carry over?
Well, I think you look at the types of throws, maybe the pressure that he was under, who you're throwing to. I think you look at all those things, and you get through that game and you say, okay, well, we're asking him to do things that probably aren't his strong suit. Were we throwing to guys that weren't getting open? I think you look at all those things. I think those were plays that were all man-to-man matchups by and large, and we got to be able to hit on them. You see those as 50-50 type of plays. So you walk away and you hope that 50% is reality, and it wasn't in that game. And if it becomes that 50, how does that change the flow of the game? But you can't go back and change it. I think so. We got to analyze what we're doing. We're seeing a completely different defense in North Dakota State this week as far as what they do. So our game plan has to not only model what Tommy and Sean do best, but then what works the best against North Dakota State's defense. So again, learn something from what we saw there. Not try to make the repeated results of that Saturday and move forward, and understand that we're going to have to throw the ball effectively to beat this team and any team moving forward.
I'm sure Sean was a little disappointed not to get as many reps in this game, and I'm sure you guys were disappointed not get him kind of getting going in this contest. What do you learn from that? How do you make sure that Sean is getting some consequential touches? Because we have seen this now in the Idaho game and the Montana game where he was on the sideline for a big part of it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into that. I've talked about the flow of the game at times. Certainly situationally, we use Sean. I think the choices we've made to probably get under center and hand the ball to our running backs a little bit more in that particular game, was dictated by the environment we were in. Noise and your previous experience of noise predicates some of the decisions you made, and ultimately we didn't execute in those situations. And it's easy to say, well, if we'd had Sean in there, we would have gotten a first down instead of handing off to one of our running backs. So you learn from that. Again, you can't change what's happened, but you can change how you move forward. Fortunately, we are playing at home. This next game at the very least, and we can go after it with everything and use our guys. In particular, I think both quarterbacks in the ways we have in most games. And that doesn't mean the running backs aren't going to touch the ball, but in real critical situations, Tommy and Sean have been probably our biggest playmakers, to say the least. So, find a way to get them both involved and make it as hard as we can on the other team's defense.
Yeah, we've also talked about getting both of those guys into rhythm, and it does feel like we've seen Sean come in, in the red zone, and there's some communication issues there. We saw the false start when he came in. Have you guys run into that a little bit, and do you feel like there's something where he's just a little bit cold getting in and then trying to communicate in that hot environment?
Well, that particular one, his first play, was not on it. He was trying to get it corrected. Probably should have just called a timeout, honestly, to get it sorted out. I think to the naked eye, it looks like, okay, there goes Chambers in again, and we have an issue. That particular play was not on him. But needless to say, it happened. And that's part of an environment like that. You got to be able to communicate the very best you can in a small window of time. So, as we move forward and ideally get an opportunity to play, as many games as possible, and a hostile environment might present itself again, and we have to continue to learn from, how we've handled those situations, things that haven't worked well for us, and things that have, and try to keep things. While trying to keep things as simple as possible, not lose sight of how dynamic we can be and what what's our best way to get to that point of being dynamic.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple of slow starts here too in the Idaho game and this game as well. And the offense is obviously so strong, but in this game, you had 3 plays run by the time they had 2 touchdowns scored. Have you given any thought on how to get that going? Maybe getting the ball to the offense if you win the coin flip or something along those lines. Like, where do you guys evaluate that start to the game so that the momentum doesn't shift so quickly?
Well, I think that's certainly one piece of taking the ball right away that comes into play. We got to play better defense to start. I think everything gets poured on the offense not having great starts. I think you could flip around and say, well, the defense, has to get off the field, whether it's the start of the game. I know we had a 3-and-out at Idaho, but then that long drive, then our second drive, the first 2 drives against Montana, I look, those 3 drives, several third down opportunities to get off the field, and we got to be able to do that. And at the same time, if our first series offensively doesn't go our way, well, the next one does. And, ultimately we responded well enough in Missoula. We just didn't find a way to score points, so ultimately you don't respond. You move it a little bit, but you don't cap those drives off. We have to be about finishing drives and understand on both sides of the football, it's not always going to work, but how do we respond? How do we stop momentum? How do we create momentum ourselves? And that's really the conversations we're having. We got to be as aggressive as we possibly can as we move forward. And with that, the other team's going to make some plays, but we need to make our fair share. And in those 2 losses, in those first halves in particular, we didn't do that.
I do want to ask you about the defensive line on that defensive side. They had 4 sacks in this game. It seemed like there was some big push, and now you get a chance against one of those Dakota schools, and the top line discussion is, are you tough enough in the trenches? How did you feel like that D-line played in this game? Because it did feel like they were pushing that O-line back at times.
Yeah, I think we got some pressure, but we also let him get out of the pocket at times, and we gotta be able to control that. I thought we got some push in the run game, but then when the ball spit laterally, we didn't tackle real well, and that wasn't always the guys up front. So, real emphasis on continuing to play physical up front on the defensive side. We are as healthy as we can possibly be, but then, they got to be able to just be disruptive but make plays. And then the guys, the safeties, linebackers, corners alike, they got to come up and make those plays. And we're capable of tackling the football really well, and on that Saturday, especially early, we didn't do it. So real point of emphasis is we've moved through these 2 weeks, and it has to show up on Saturday for us.
All right. Well, one of the guys who's big on that D line is Brody Grebe, and he's sitting down with Grace Lawrence coming up next on the Bobcat Insider.
Welcome back to Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
Here's the snap. Desparis pulls it out of the belly of his running back. He's pressured, and he's brought down, roped up by Brody Grebe, his 7th sack of the year.
I think a lot of it is just relentless effort. That's what we say in the D-line room. We always say dominate, and whether that be pass rushing, in the run game, in the weight room, whatever you do, you got to dominate what you do.
You lead the team with 8.5 sacks. How annoyed do you think are opposing quarterbacks of you?
I hope they're pretty annoyed. Just trying to get pressure on them, help out our coverage in the back end. The less time he has to stand back there, the better it is for the defense as a whole.
Big Sky teams gotta hate game planning for number 10. Brody Grebe is just fearless, reckless, and an emotional leader for this Bobcat defense.
You mentioned the D-line being closer than ever this season since you've been here. What kind of clicked this season to change that?
The way that the season ended last year started making us closer right away, because we came out of that SDSU game knowing that our D-line, we didn't feel like we played up to our standard. And right after that, we knew that we were going to bring a different level of attention to detail in the winter, in the spring, and then it came to the summer. And it all goes by so fast, but we got really tight.
And your second shot is right now. It starts this week when it comes to the postseason. Do you guys still think back to that 2021 championship, come into this game with a chip on your shoulder, you get the Bison at home? How cool is that going to be on Saturday? Yeah,
we've had some run-ins with the Bison before, and they haven't ended the way that we wanted. 18, 19, 21. So that definitely puts a chip on our shoulder. We get them here now. At home, we're as good as anybody. So I know Bobcat Nation's going to show out for us, and it's going to be a great crowd. It's going to be a great time.
Was football always your favorite sport?
No, it wasn't actually. I grew up liking basketball more. I was a gym rat. My dad was the coach, like I said, before I was even born. So growing up, I was always in the gym with him. I helped manage. I hung out with the high schoolers and stuff like that, and I loved basketball. And really until maybe my junior year, I thought I was going to play basketball in college. Ended up deciding, or not knowing, I guess, in my senior year what I wanted to do, so I went out to Connecticut for a prep year and kind of fell in love with football a lot more out there, I guess, and decided that that was what I wanted to do.
Can you tell me what it was like being a coach's kid growing up?
It makes you tougher, I would say, and overall, they hold you to a higher standard, so you have to have that standard for yourself every day, in and out, or else it's not going to be a good day at practice.
Welcome back to Bobcat Insider, sponsored by First Interstate Bank.
All right, well, here we go. Second round of the playoffs, and we've got a blue blood matchup, Montana State and North Dakota State. Now, they like to pronounce it Bison, not Bison. Is that right?
Yes, Bison.
Okay, good. Yeah, people get a little upset about that over there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what have you done with all your old North Dakota State stuff? Is that all tucked away in a closet?
I don't have much. Yeah, it's funny. You leave a place and it's your alma mater. You do keep a few things, but I think it's stayed in the same compartment.
Just
ever since. So.
One box tucked away in the crawl space now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's all put away as we get ready for North Dakota State coming into Montana for the first time since 2010, which is a game you were a part of, and a lot of life has been lived since then as we get into this matchup. And, for North Dakota State, obviously 8-3, a little bit of a different year, not quite the same dominance that we've seen, but a lot of those losses were early. How have you seen them kind of evolve when you take a look at their tape going into this game?
Well, I think that's the right word. I think they've continued to find themselves. I look on the offensive side, a shift in maybe who's touching the ball, how many people are touching the ball. Quite frankly, I think that's been the biggest change. Getting their receivers a little bit more involved with the run game, playing through running backs, certainly playing the two quarterbacks, and still at the same time, doing that all behind a really good offensive line. Defensively, I think they've continued to get better and better. Continued to get more pressure on the quarterback. They've played really pretty well complementary as far as the complementary football side of things go as of late at the same time. I think in their losses it was special teams, it was turnovers in the games that they've won against some really good teams as of late. They haven't made those same errors. Cam
Miller, the quarterback for them, one of two guys they're using, but he was the starting quarterback in that 2021 championship game. How different is this offense right now? We all know them as fullback, kind of ground and pound, but he's having a great year through the air. So how different is that offense right now?
Well, I think it all lives within a relatively similar space. I do think they are spreading it out a little bit more, playing three wide receivers a little bit more. But still, they have more personnel groupings with different fullbacks and tight ends and two running backs at the same time than most people do. But he's certainly their best player. And I think looking back at 21, he was the starting quarterback, but more of a game manager at that time. And you can see him that he's continued to develop. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He's completing the ball at a very high rate. And he's making a lot of plays with his legs, whether that's design quarterback runs or in the scramble mode. So he's a guy that we're going to have to contain. I think he's going to do a few things, but ultimately, if we can look at the end of the game and say we contained Cam Miller, that's going to work in our favor.
On the defensive side, give us the top line, the notes on them. What are they doing well on that side of the football?
Well, very disciplined. They play really hard. They play guys up front at the four spots, so they're always fresh. I think they've tackled real well to this point. They keep the ball in front of them. So, not super flashy, but they've made it hard for teams to drive the ball and ultimately score. And it's like I said, it's a disciplined form that is in the right spot generally. And then, when they get there, they tackle it, and they're gonna allow you to do some things but they have that bend but don't break mentality. And then, up front, they've continued to be able to put more and more pressure, and that's a lot to do with those guys up front being fresh at this time of year and really choosing to get after it.
Well, here we go. We're into the playoffs now, and you get a couple of blue bloods batching up in Bozeman. How grateful you guys to have this game at home and get back in front of this hometown crowd again.
Oh, really excited. Our playoff games for the last couple of years, it's been an incredible environment, and we need it to be on Saturday. Our fans truly do make a difference, and at playoff time, even more so. They're going to get a chance to see two really good teams fight it out on the field, and our fans need to know that they can make an impact, and they will make an impact come this Saturday.
Coach, appreciate the insight.
All right, thanks.
All right.